The webinar is now live.
Cool.
We'll wait a few minutes to let people join.
Yeah. Let's wait till like 2:02 to start this.
Sure.
Hi, everyone who's joining in. We're going to wait till 2:02 to start this just to make sure everyone hops in.
The closed captioning has been really creeping me out. It's scary accurate.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, watch this. Ready? MD5 hashes. Oh, it didn't do that one.
It did the, check this out.
Did,
SHA 256. Yeah. I think
Wait,
we're
you say it. You say it.
SHA 256. SHA 256. Ah, there we go.
There we go. Nice.
Okay, looks like it's 2:02, so let's get this started. So hi, everyone. My name is Petr Esakov. I'm the president of the Competitive Cybersecurity Organization, and I'm joined by Jameswell.
Hey guys, I'm Jameswell. I am the vice president of Cybersecurity Organization.
So our club does a variety of stuff. We teach everyone from the ground up who's interested in cyber for all the skills necessary to compete in cyber competitions. Now, these skills tend to transfer over fairly well to the industry, since these cyber competitions are designed to simulate what you'll see in the industry. So we teach a lot of relevant real-world skills. Our club, it can be separated into 3 different portions. Offensive cyber, that's, as the name describes, where you hack into networks and you use industry techniques for testing network security. If everyone's familiar with the term, that's pen testing. We go in, do a pen test on an enterprise environment, simulate an enterprise environment, and we report on what was wrong and what was good. The second component of our club is defensive cyber. This is the flip side of the coin to offensive cybersecurity, and this is where you harden systems, kick off attackers, and manage network systems and a lot of machines. Finally, the last part of our club is capture the flags. Now, capture the flags are essentially challenge competitions where they have a bunch of like challenges where you get to play. They're essentially like riddles that you get to solve. In terms of tech, it lets you play around with a lot of technology that you normally don't use and is sometimes funky, but it teaches you for how everything goes. And, you know, it's a competition, so often there's prizes as well. So that's fun also. If you want more details, contact ccso@psu.edu. That's our club email. These are our main outlets. Now, these slides are posted in the Google Drive folder that was linked with this webinar. So you'll be able to find all the links listed in this presentation, and you'll be able to follow along as well here. So these are the major outlets that we use. If you're interested in joining the club, join these guys. Okay, James, I'll hand it off to you. Yep.
Sweet. So now for the meat and bones of our workshop, we're going to go over cryptography, what it is. We'll talk about encryption, so asymmetric and symmetric encryption. We'll talk about how encryption functions over the internet. we'll discuss what hashing is and how message digests work, and we'll talk a little bit about steganography and some real world use cases of it. So first off, what is cryptography? Cryptography is the art of protecting information through various algorithms. So we have three primary categories of cryptographic functions. Those are encryption, hashing, and steganography. Encryption protects the contents of the message. So if you look at a message, everything inside is secret. Hashing helps us confirm the integrity of a message. So we can confirm, hey, this message hasn't been changed at all. It's still what the original sender intended to send. And finally, we have steganography, which is we might not even be aware that communication is taking place because the actual transfer of data is, very secretive. So first off, let's talk encryption. So encryption, we know that there is communication taking place, but we don't know what's being said. So historic examples could have been the Caesar cipher used by Julius Caesar, the Enigma in World War II, or if you guys practiced Pig Latin in elementary school, middle school, that's kind of an example of encryption as well. So we have two primary types of encryption. We have symmetric encryption, in which there's a single key that is used to lock and unlock your data or decrypt and encrypt your data. And we have asymmetric encryption, in which there are two keys at play. There's a private key and a public key. And if you use two of them in conjunction, you can successfully decrypt or encrypt your data. And one key will kind of like undo the stuff of the other one. So first, taking a look at symmetric encryption. This is the most intuitive to understand. There's a single key that's used by both parties, so the sender and the recipient. That key is used to decrypt and encrypt the data. So we take the plain text, we encrypt it with the key, and it turns into something that we call ciphertext. So this is a hodgepodge of random strings, random looking strings and characters, or numbers, that if you look at it, you may not be able to make out the original plain text. But if we then apply the same exact key, we can decrypt the information and get human readable plain text out of it. Symmetric encryption compared to asymmetric encryption is generally faster, but because there is a single point of failure, it's generally considered less secure than asymmetric encryption. If at any time during this webinar you have a question, you can use the Q&A feature, or you can go ahead and pop your question into chat. So when we talk about how encryption is accomplished, we'll talk about different ciphers. So these are just different ways that information or your data gets mixed up. However, these ciphers are reversible. So if we were to do an overhand, or if we were to do a riffle shuffle, we'd be able to pick out all the cards and put them back on top of each other in the original order. If we smushed all the cards back together, we'd somehow be able to smush in the opposite direction and get our original cards back. So a couple ciphers that are used in symmetric encryption. First, we have shift ciphers. So let's think of the letters in the alphabet. We'd say the letter A is the number 1, the letter B is the number 2, the letter C is the number 3. If we have we'll describe the shift ciphers with rot for rotation. So a Rot3 cipher shifts the letters 3 spaces. So the letter B, it would be B, 1, 2, 3, turns into the letter E. If we had the letter A, it'd be B, C, D. It turned into the letter D. Shift ciphers are fairly simple to utilize, and they're oftentimes actually included in some of the more complex and more secure cipher methods as one of their steps. So Julius Caesar, when we talk about the Caesar cipher, he used a Rot13 cipher, so shifted half the alphabet. And this was great because some of his enemies were either illiterate or just weren't very familiar with the Latin alphabet. And this technique was super duper effective because they didn't have frequency analysis at the time to use statistics to determine, oh, this is most likely the letter E, because it shows up the most in the English alphabet and stuff like that. So moving on to block ciphers. Instead of going character by character, we can separate our, okay, so in the shift cipher, we had a single key that was the number of letters that we would shift. So that'd be like the position 13 for a Rot3 cipher. We now have block ciphers. So we have a key as a string of text or a string of numbers. So all of our plain text, in this case, encryption is, that is split into blocks of a certain length. That length is determined by the size of our key. So the key is secret. It is 6 letters long. Our blocks are 6 characters long. In order to encrypt this, we'll kind of transform each letter by the corresponding character in the key. So the letter E becomes W, the letter N becomes R, and the transformation between these two corresponds, you can't relate them to each other, but you can relate them to whatever was in the key. So again, this is still symmetric encryption because we can still use the word secret to go from WREICI back to ENCRYP. This is used in a couple of our password encryption algorithms. So Blowfish is used to store passwords in a couple of Linux distributions, and that uses some block ciphers. And finally, we have stream ciphers. So block ciphers are really good at getting all the data out at one time, but stream ciphers are much easier to implement in actual code itself. So in stream ciphers, every single character in our plain text is fed into a random character generator, which can be initialized by the key. And so if you put in the same key across 2 different encryptions, you'll get actually the same transformations applied. So using the key, you get a repeatable encryption. And then, of course, in reverse, you can use the same key to decrypt your information. However, if you do reuse keys with a stream cipher, it cuts down the security by a lot because then you're able to use stuff like frequency analysis or correspond stuff between both of the transmissions. All right, so that was symmetric encryption and the different ways that symmetric encryption is accomplished. Symmetric encryption only used 1 key. Now we're going to talk about this weird thing of asymmetric encryption. So instead of 1 key, we have 2 keys. There is a public key, which you share with anybody. Anybody that wants to send messages to you, they will be using your public key. But you have a second key, a private key that you keep secret and you protect with your life. If that gets compromised, you're going to have to switch out both keys. Asymmetric encryption is far more secure than symmetric encryption, but in order to encrypt and decrypt your data, it takes a lot more time. So what we'll actually see is asymmetric encryption is used to validate who people are over the internet. And then once you verified, oh yeah, I'm talking to Peter and I'm not accidentally talking to Kira, who's listening on our conversation, then we'll swap over to symmetric encryption just for speed of messages. So the primary principle behind asymmetric encryption is prime numbers make math pretty hard. So if we were to take the product of 2 prime numbers, that's super duper easy to calculate. But doing the opposite, taking the product and finding the 2 prime factors of it, that's pretty difficult to do if we start getting into big numbers. So as an example, what is 907, a prime number, times 773? Either in the chat or put it in the Q&A. You'll get a virtual high five if you're able to provide the right answer. Going once, going twice. Nice, Dylan's got it. So does Amita. Yep, it is 701,111. So that wasn't awfully hard. Like maybe we couldn't do it by hand or in our heads in a reasonable amount of time, but you know, using modern tools, we can do it pretty easily. Now let's try and do the reverse with different factors. What are the two prime factors for 49,193,171? That's going to be pretty hard to do because you'd have to go, okay, is it 1 in something? No. Is it the number 3 in something? No. Is it the number 5 in something? No. And you'd go up all the way until you got the numbers 6,959 and 7,069. So it was 6959 and 7069. Those would be the two prime factors of this. So we can kind of get an idea of, yeah, this would make asymmetric encryption pretty hard to brute force. Modern day encryption, for symmetric encryption, we use something called AES. That's used when you connect to Wi-Fi networks. Your browser uses it, VPNs use it, file systems, if they're encrypted, will use that. And we also have RSA for our asymmetric keys, or asymmetric encryption. And again, asymmetric encryption is commonly used to set up symmetric encryption. So if you were to go to a web browser, and actually we can do this right now. So let's go to a web browser and let's see the little lock icon, and we'll go to the details of the connection. We go to security, we see, hey, there's our AES being used. And if we look into TLS 1.3, we'll see some stuff about RSA in there as well. So yeah, we see AES, our symmetric key encryption, is used over the internet. Whoopsies. Cool. So we can also try this out ourselves manually. So we can get an idea of what goes into calculating and encrypting and decrypting messages with RSA. So if we use the Rsa Calculator Demo, right here, we can put in 2 prime numbers. I'll take 2 prime numbers in chat that you guys want to use. Take the first 2 that pop up. Going once. Ooh, that's a big one. So let's do 7243, and let's use the number 3. Those are the first 2 numbers. Q should be greater than 7. All right, so I need one more number. Going once. Going twice. 11. Perfect. Cool. So let's go ahead and calculate this. So we may be getting an issue with this number right here. So let's try 8191. I see. Ah, there we are. Cool. So we have to calculate a couple of different variables. So first we need the product of both of these numbers together. So the product is 90,101. We need something called the length, which is calculated by subtracting 1 from both of these products, and then we multiply them together. And then from this number, we calculate these 2 numbers. The math of this is going to take quite a while to explain. So long story short, we end up getting these 2 really neat private and public keys. So we can see that the total product of these 2 is shared in both the private and the public key. But from the encryption and decryption key here and this length right there, only one of those is shared at a time. So with E, you can't actually figure out D because you don't know what L is. And with D, you can't figure out the private key E because you still don't know what L is. So let's take a message to encrypt. So all messages are going to be converted into ASCII code. So if we did hello hack PSU, we encrypted that, we would have an encrypted message of these bytes. And then if we were to take that and decrypt it again, then we would be using the using the public key right here. So these two numbers, and then if we decrypted that back, we would get hello hack PSU. The exact math of this is using modulo to calculate the remainder after you multiply a couple things together. If you're into that, stick around or send us a question after the webinar, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. But moving on now. That was our RSA, so public key asymmetric encryption. It holds pretty secure because we can just bump up how big those prime numbers are. So instead of using small numbers like 3, 5, 7, 11, we can use numbers even greater than 7,243 and 8,191 because they are 512 bits long. So in order to brute force all the possible combinations with a CPU that is far outside the capabilities of modern technology, it would still take a heckin' long time to brute force. So it's kind of a visual way to represent this. Let's play 3-cup Monty. I'll take guesses which cup holds the right encryption key. Is it the left cup, the middle cup, or the right cup? You're actually right. It is the right cup, Amita. So virtual high five to you. Good job. But this is far too easy. This is represented. This is only 3 possible combinations. RSA has 1.34 times 10 to the 154th possible keys. And this doesn't even begin to cover like a single % of it. So now let's play 8,192 cup Monty. Which cup holds the right encryption key? It's actually this one right here. But Ryan, you were very close. All right, cool. So that was our asymmetric encryption. And right now, most encryption works and stays secure because it just takes way too long for us to brute force or calculate keys. But with quantum computing, we're able to calculate stuff much faster. And so we're actually looking into different, security researchers are looking into various different algorithms that are quantum proof or quantum resistant. So they can hold up even when quantum computing is used to try and brute force stuff, which is pretty neat. So completely different ballgame now. We're talking about hashing. So hashing converts a input into ideally a unique string that can be used to verify the input. So it's a one-way function. So you can't take this sum of DFCD3454 and calculate the input of Fox. But you can see that if you change the input, you get a completely different hash. So if you know that you are looking for the input Fox, and that is the quote right thing, and you suddenly get the hash of 52ED879E, then you know the input probably was not Fox. So ideally, a good hash function should not be reversible and should not have collisions. So the red fox runs across the ice should not give the same hash of Fox. Otherwise, it compromises the integrity of the hashing algorithm. So bear with me right now, but this is how 2 computers send information across the internet. This utilizes hashing and also public and private key encryption. And as Kira pointed out, there's a quantum computing workshop tonight at 6. So definitely tune into that because that is super interesting. So we are Alice. We want to send a message to Bob. We construct our message in blue. And in order for Bob to help confirm our message wasn't tampered with, we'll create a hash of it. And that becomes our message digest. So it says, hey, I'm talking about what's in the message itself. You can use me to confirm the message. And we will end up encrypting that message digest, which with our private key, which Bob can later undo with his public key. So we now have this purple sign digest that no one can tamper with because they don't know our private key. So like they can't re-sign it if they tamper it. So we combine that with our message, and then we use Bob's public key in order to encrypt the entire thing. So now only Bob with his private key, is able to take all of this and unpackage it into the signed digest and the message. So now on Bob's end, what he can do is he can take the message and he himself can go ahead and verify the hash. So he'll create that himself, and he'll also decrypt the hash that I sent him and check if these two line up. If these don't line up, then Bob can conclude, either whatever medium I was sending, Alice was sending the data along, the message got corrupted, or someone malicious like Petr is trying to tamper with our messages and send us false information. So in a nutshell, that would not be ideal, but this is how message digest, so hashing and encryption with our public key encryption, is used across the internet. And now I'll pass things on to Petr, where he's going to talk a little bit more about this funky thing called steganography.
Okay, just to start this off, I want to let everyone know that the files I'm about to go through, including this song, can be found at this Google Drive link. It's a bit.ly link, but it redirects to a Google Drive folder, so you can download it and kind of follow along. Now let me set up my screen share here. Yes. Okay. Oh, shoot. Technical difficulties. I'm just gonna not present here. Let me play you guys a song. Am I sharing audio? Yeah, I am. Oh. God. Do you guys hear this?
Yes.
Okay. You get the idea. Fairly generic song, but just keep this song in mind. It'll come into play a little bit later. So what is steganography? Jameswell talked previously about encryption, and that's where you don't care if someone knows that you're sending a message, but all you want to do is to protect that message so that no one else can tamper with it or read it. Steganography is a little bit different. Steganography comes into play if you don't want anyone to even know that there is communication. Some historic examples include like microdots, where during the Cold War, American spies would send small little pieces of paper about the size of a square millimeter, and they'd stick them to small packages, either to like the inside of a book or onto like a card of some sorts, and they'd send it to their spies in the Soviet Union. The spies would receive it, they'd look at it under the microscope, and they'd see the text. But these microdots were so small, they were pretty much undetectable by people. They were pretty much undetectable if people were trying to find them. Another example is invisible ink. I'm pretty sure we've all played around with the chemistry set at one point, and a lot of times there's the invisible ink, which you can write with, and then if you heat it or apply another chemical to it, then the text shows up. That's a similar way. It hides that any information is being sent and can be sent through common medium, just like a paper of some sorts. So let's look at what steganography is. There's many types of steganography in addition to that, and these are some of the more common types. So you can hide different content, hidden content in audio. An example is Morse code. Morse code was originally used to transmit data, or I guess text, over phone line when they didn't have the bandwidth to actually sustain voice calls. And they encoded the data in terms of audio. There's more modern examples of this. But another example is data embedded in pictures. So there's a couple, you can embed data in pictures in many ways. An example is what's called LSB, or least significant bit steganography. So if we look at the two squares here, I'll tell you that they're actually two different colors. we can see that the color codes here. We have 4 sets of 8 bits, each one representing one represents how much color green there should be, one represents blue, one represents black, or sorry, or RGB, red, green, blue. The other one represents I think it's like a luminosity. I forgot what the last one represents, but all of these combine to show see the colors what you see on the screen. Your monitor, the one you're watching right now, is composed with many different pixels, and each of them can be represented by one of these numbers. So an example here, let's look at what happened here. These might not look like different colors, but they are, and all that changed is only one single bit. These bits, since it's binary, range in orders of magnitude. So this one is only the value for 1, right? So if we change this bit, the value changes by 1. If we change this bit right here, the value changes by 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, whichever factor of 2 this one is. So this would change the color of the picture dramatically. It would change it a lot more. But since we're only changing the least significant bit, the color didn't change. So we can actually use this to store data in pictures, right? If we know that we can change the last bit of every single pixel, and we know that then to later read that data from the last pixel of data from the entire picture, then we can actually encrypt and store, or not encrypt, sorry, hide information in the picture where it's imperceptible to the human eye, and then later extract that information by looking at every single last bit of each pixel. Now let's take a look at an example for this. So there was a collection of malware called Duku. It was discovered in 2001. And the way it stole information from the Department of Justice is it would send regular pictures, JPEG images, to its control nodes. So it'd steal information and then try to exfiltrate it using pictures. Now let's take a look at an example here. We see 2 pandas. They look like the exact same picture, but if you look at this picture here, I don't know how well this can come through on Zoom, but there's going to be a bunch of noise here. And this noise is actually the difference between 2 images. This image right here was subtracted from this image, and that's what we see here. This noise is that least significant bit, those are the least significant bit changes. If we decode this, this will be hidden information. So let's take a look at that song I was talking about previously. I'm going to pull up software called Audacity. And I'm going to open up, it's called song.mp3. This was in the Google Drive folder, and you can follow along here. So here we can see what looks to be just a standard waveform. We can play it. It's the same song. It doesn't look really strange at all. But let's take a look at the spectrogram. What a spectrogram is a graph of the intensity of different frequencies over time. So for example, here we can see around 2 kilohertz. We see like a beat here. We see it's slightly redder. That means there was a tone being played around 2 kilohertz at this timestamp here. And this is just a way to represent this song and to view it. And we can see a lot more noise kind of on the bottom sections of it. That's like the beats. You know, you can see the individual beats where like the drums playing or whatever. Now, looking at this, it looks pretty normal. It looks like a normal sound clip, but human hearing goes up to from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Now let's take a look at the spectrogram using those settings. So we can see the min frequency here is we're going to just leave it at 0. We could set the max frequency to 20,000. We can see some data here. Let's focus in on it. It looks like it starts around 15,000, so that's what I'm going to use for my min. And we can see we have what looks to be an image that was encoded in the audio file just using sound. When you hear this audio clip, this sound does play. If this waveform was just the entire clip and including the low frequencies, it would sound not like a song, it would sound very digital and weird. But since we can see that this range, this hidden message starts from 15,000 hertz to 20,000 hertz, that's in the upper hearing ranges of humans. Most of the time, you won't be able to hear this. And we can see that the colors are kind of dull. There's not a lot of bright reds. That means it's also fairly quiet. When the song is played, you're not going to be able to hear this. But after examining the spectrogram, we can see that there was a hidden message. Let's go back to the presentation. Let's take a look at yet another sound clip. Let me pull this up. This is called tones. I can go into that a little bit later. There's some software, and this is answering Amita. There's software that is able to generate just the picture of it in terms of waveform. And then you can later sum the two. Like I just took a song, summed it with that high frequency noise, and made it into a single clip. I'll post the link to the software where I created the picture, the actual hidden data, after the webinar. So let's play another clip. Okay. What does that sound like? Does it sound familiar? Yeah, perfect. It sounds like a phone dial. So let's take a look at this clip in Audacity as well. I really love Audacity. It's fairly powerful software. So that's what I use for analyzing sound files myself. So let's take a look here. This is what the waveform looks like in Audacity. We can see a bunch of, let me just set it to 1 here. We can see a bunch of what looks like just tones, and we can play them here. And it's a bunch of sequences of tones. And like you said, they sound like phones. Now, let's take a look at what these frequencies are. Let's highlight one of these sets of tones. We can do analyze and then plot spectrum. And we can see 2 peaks. One's around 697 hertz, and the other one's around 1477 hertz. These are what's called DTMF tones. DTMF tones are sums of 2 tones at 2 different frequencies. And by analyzing those frequencies, analyzing the sound, we can determine those frequencies using FFT, Fourier transform. This was originally used as a way to communicate between telecommunications devices. So when you hear like those automated systems of press 1 to be connected to so-and-so, it used to be that the phones would use these tones to tell the other person on their side that, oh, I pressed number 1. It would also be used for dialing as well, when there was a dialing system on the back end. So let's take a look at those 2 frequencies. It was 697 and 1477, I believe. Yeah, 1477. So we can see that the combination of the 697 hertz and 1477 hertz accounts for number 3. So we can see we have a sequence of 2 3s here. Over here, we can once again plot the spectrum, and we can see 2 peaks at around 770 hertz and 1208 hertz. So 7070 and 1209 is close enough. That gives us a 4. That was a sequence of 2 4s. If you decode it, it turns out to be around this number sequence if you continue that pattern. Can someone guess how you get the message from here. Any ideas? Does anyone? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yep, that's correct, Amita. We can decode these and figure out that the message here. So 2 4s is going to be an H. 2 3s is going to be an E. 3 5s is going to be an L. 3 5s is also going to be an L. The 3 6s is going to be an O. Well, a single 7 is a P. 4 7s is an S, and 2 8s is a U. So you see, we have decoded this message, and we found the message. Sometimes you can actually, if you're recording like sound around someone, and they have their dial tones turned on, you can actually decode those tones to figure out what the exact number is that they were dialing. Now, this is not to be used for malicious purposes, but it's something to keep in mind if you're trying to be private. Now, let's take a look at images. So first, I'm going to look at parrot 1. This is a pretty looking parrot, but he's hiding a secret. Let's take a look at the properties of the file. You can use this using this link right here as well, the Exif link in the slides. But I'm going to use the Windows file properties. We can go to details and we can see, oh, there's a super secret message here, and that this image was created to demonstrate that Exif data can be edited. What is Exif data? Exif data is information stored in a file that tells information about the file. We can see that it was edited in Adobe Photoshop. That's part of the Exif data. When this picture was taken, and a lot of other stuff. If you take this picture with a phone, it'll probably say that, oh, the camera maker is Apple. If you're taking it with like a DSLR, it'll tell you your ISO and many other settings. This is useful for telling information about an image, but it can also reveal information. If we scroll down here, we have a latitude and longitude. Now, if you were to decode these, you would find that the location places you somewhere in State College. Google is really nice for this. You can usually copy and paste this in. I'm not going to do this right now, but if you're interested in it, you can do that as well. Exif data, when you take a picture like on an iPhone, it uses GPS data to mark down where that picture was taken. You should be careful with this, as it can reveal where you were and what you're doing. Now, the other method is very similar to LSB. And in principle, it really is LSB. For this, I'm going to pull up Pixlr. You can use Photoshop as well. Photoshop might be even a little bit better for this. But Pixlr is a free photo editor. Here, I'm going to open image. Desktop. And I'm going to open up Parrot 2. And here we see another parrot. Look at him, the innocent looking parrot. Well, he's not so innocent. We can, if we go to adjustments and then levels, we can actually cut off how much of the color spectrum we see here. So if we, for example, turn this way down and just focus on the least significant bits, we can see a message popping through. Hi, hack PSU. Normally, you wouldn't be able to see this because, once again, only the least significant bit is changing. But if we focus in on that single least significant bit, we can see the message popping through. Normal LSB wouldn't even be able to detect this because, well, it's not encoded data in the least significant bit. It's visual data that's encoded in the least significant bit. So let's take a look at another example here. Least significant bit. It's been talked about a lot of times. And here's the link here. This website uses LSB, so it encrypts data encodes data in the least significant bits of the image, and actually uses the 3 least significant bits. It turns out you can modify a lot more than just a single significant bit and still have it be imperceptible. So let's go to browse. And we'll use parrot 3 for this. Oh, sorry, decode. I wanted to use decode here. We can click decode. And we can see a bunch of gibberish, but in the first few lines, we can see hi hack PSU. That was our hidden message. The reason you see all this crap is because the program doesn't know where the message ends. So it just took the least significant bit from the entire image. You can actually encode a lot of information like this. If you for example, if you take a message file or like even a Word document or something like that, cipher it in base 64 and insert the base 64 into here, you can transfer any type of file through an image, any sort of information as well. You can insert binary data in here as well. Now, Word documents, are they safe? Well, maybe. We can take a look at the Word document that I have in the Google Drive folder as well. It turns out that Word documents are just zip files. So for example, if we open up this Word file, we see the CCSO logo and some text. So let's take a look at what happens if we extract it. And we can see that it extracted because 7-zip doesn't care. If it's a docs file, it doesn't look at the ending. It knows it's an archive, so it extracted it. And we can see, oh, what's this image? It was a message that wasn't in the file. Now we can take this a little bit further. Word is smart enough to know, or Microsoft is smart enough to know that maybe allowing you to put arbitrary files in their Word documents is maybe not a great idea. For example, if you put like a malicious executable in there, you could run code on the target's machine, which wasn't intended for them, and potentially attack them that way. So if I put like a Word document in here, test, I take all of this, I compress it back, and then I rename it to a document file again. We can try opening it up, and Word will complain about it. It allows you to open it up, and you still won't see the hidden file. But you know what? We don't want that message. There's a way to get around it. So I'm going to delete this. Let's take a look at the Word folder. And we have these XML files here. These store the settings for the Word document, like the styles and so on. And these store information about like fonts as well. Let's take a look at document.xml. Seems fairly normal, but if you scroll down, we have a lot of data here. Can anyone tell what encoding format this data is in, this green data? I don't know how well it shows up. There's a couple ways to tell here. Let me scroll down to the bottom. Well, it's base 64. You can tell just by the characters here. It's got lowercase and uppercase letter as well as numbers. And base 64 data, we can take it. Oh, gosh. If I can copy this. We can take it, copy it, and see what's inside, because it's not encrypted, it's just encoded. For stuff like this, I really like CyberChef. CyberChef is a great website that, well, it runs everything on your local machine, but it has a lot of tools that if you don't have like a Linux system, you can just open up the website and run. So if I wanted to paste in this data, I can put it in here. And I can take from base 64. And here we see a bunch of data that came out, but we can see that we're on the right track here because we're getting a lot of some plain text. And this is what looks to be like the beginning of a file. Over time, you can actually tell what types of files all of these are just from the magic bytes. Magic bytes are the starts of every single file. By looking at enough of them, you can kind of tell that. So this happens to be a document file. Let me save it here. If you open it up, well, there we go. Here's another hidden message. We hid a, yep, I'll wrap it up, Kira. I'm almost done. We hid a message we hid an entire file in the Word document file without anyone ever knowing, even with Microsoft. So, yep, this is the last slide here. So you can actually use these techniques to hide it, information network traffic. The two specific ones protocols I'm gonna highlight are DNS and ping. DNS is when you say browse to google.com and your computer doesn't know what IP to connect to. It just has that domain name. DNS is the protocol that tells your computer, oh, you should, google.com actually corresponds to so-and-so IP. You can actually use DNS to send a lot more information. It has options to send text, and you can actually hide data in DNS without it being really seen or suspicious. You can also encode data in pings. You can encode it either by varying the size of the packets, or you can actually encode the data right in the ping packet itself without most computers realizing it. So I guess the takeaway from today's presentation is there's many ways to hide the information if you want it. And it's interesting to know how to do so. Well, that's the end. Trust nothing, exactly. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining in. I want to remind you that all of this, including the slides, is in the Google Drive link that I posted. Let me grab that link again. Let me post that Google Drive link again here.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but we can go ahead and take some questions right now if anyone has them.
Thank you.